Ladies and gentlemen, it is October 24th, 2023, and I'd like to finally welcome you to a moment that is at least a year in the making. It is the Dennis and the Doc podcast, episode number 1. Mr. Dennis, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you? Happy to be here. I'm kind of surprised we actually made it this far. This seems like something you talk about and never do, but here we are.
It's without dispute at this point. We are ideas people.
Yeah.
We do not execute on our ideas very often.
Yeah.
So the fact that we are sitting down doing this right now is a win in and of itself, despite the fact that more than likely fewer than a dozen people are going to actually listen to this.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you to both people listening right now.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Yeah, because, we know your options are limited when it comes for podcasts by the guys for the guys. That's just really not a saturated market at all. So we're looking to hopefully exploit that opportunity.
Yeah, finally a win for us men.
Yeah, there really ain't a lot of that going on right now. So my name, of course, is Dr. Chim Richards. I'm a professional doctor servicing the greater Omaha area. Of course, a Creighton alum, famous Jays fan, famous Blue Crew abolitionist. Alongside Mr. Dennis Thamanos, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so as a doctor introduced, I'm Mr. Dennis. I actually, I never formally went to school. I passed the bar on my own accord. I'm a lawyer here, never lost a case, but I mainly serve to advertise my still freshman year son who throws 98, and sometimes my other kids.
Yeah, we all wish Toby the best here.
Yes,
Looking forward to the release of his upcoming top 260 schools. So the first thing we're going to get into today, as this will mostly be a Creighton-focused enterprise with an eye on the national stage, we're going to talk about our expectations for the 2023-2024 Creighton season. So this will be our fourth year, now that the AP preseason poll has come out, this will be our fourth in the last 5 seasons that we are inside the top 10 at some point during the season. Something that likely in the Valley days would have seemed like an impossibility. Even during the Doug years, this wasn't something that we even approached. We're certainly in our purple patch right now. Only Duke, Kansas, and Houston were also preseason top 10 teams last year. So amongst some pretty elite company there. Dennis, what are you looking for going into this season?
Yeah, for me to put it lightly, it's I think at the very least Final Four or bust. I've actually found myself in a weird spot this year. I don't know if I'm emotionally hurt from other teams or busy, but I'm struggling to get up almost. For me, it feels like last year just was the perfect path to be laid out. You were one shot away, a 9 seed in a team you already beat from a title. And it's tough to get further than that. And it's for me, it's no excuses. This is, I think, undoubtedly the most talented group of players Creighton's ever had, and probably will have for the foreseeable future. And you need something out of it. For as much as I love an Elite 8 ring, you need something in the rafters this season.
Yeah, and because as much as you talk about, hey, maybe this team's better last year, maybe we'll be seeded higher than last year, and I think those are two pretty safe things to say, certainly amongst our fan base, but March is never a guarantee. You get the wrong team on the wrong day, and you never know what's going to happen, so it's really hard to judge success by March, but at the same time, that's where this program's at right now. And I'll tell you, if you're not really into it yet, I got to tell you, I'm kind of the opposite way. This is the team I've decided I'm all in on. For better or for worse, I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing anything. I'm not saying that anything is a promise, but this has got to be the year, I think. And
Yep.
So I'm going to invest in that, and I'm going to prepare to be hurt by it, but I'm putting all my eggs in this team.
Yeah, and don't get confused. Like I say, I'm having trouble getting up. If we're losing at the first media timeout to Florida A&M, I'll be pissed off. It'll take me all of 10 seconds to get up.
Yep. Yeah, and that's sort of, I feel like the way it's going to be with this team this year, it's going to be a lot more nervous energy for maybe our first couple games than we're used to, although I think last year was maybe a good example of the ups and downs of pressure on a team. Certainly going through the Arkansas game undefeated, looking like a top 5 team in the country, and then immediately getting hit with a 6-game losing streak. we will have some experience to draw on as a fan base this year when things maybe aren't going our way. But so what we are going to really start off with today is talking about the roster. We're going to talk about subtractions, additions, our outlook. Obviously, the big question this year has been the 4 spot, so we'll touch on that a little bit, as well as some guys who maybe aren't getting enough attention this offseason. So we're going to start with subtractions. And the first one was maybe someone who it would be expected he would leave by the end of the year, but at the start of the year, that certainly didn't seem like it was in the plans. Ben Stoltzberg goes to UC Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I think it's a loss for the future. I know preseason last year, people are kind of high on him. The athleticism is real. If he developed, if he averaged 10-5 this year out in the Big West, he's at Santa Barbara.
Yeah, loaded guard group there.
Yeah,
heavy backcourt.
Yeah, they're all the UC schools. I think Modestus is at Riverside. So
yes,
one together. But yeah, he had potential, but last year, a lot of freshman mistakes. You could see wasn't going to make an impact really last year. I don't really see how he would have pushed for minutes with this group. Maybe it would have been nice next year or the year after, but especially when you see McDermott's kind of looking at almost the new age form of high school recruiting. We're getting that guy a year or two after high school. I don't think it's a huge loss.
Yeah, and I've been on the Stoltzberg train for who the Ben Stolz. That was all Dr. Chim putting his eggs in that basket, but you could kind of see it last year that he just wasn't up to Big East speed, and that's hard to do as a freshman, but like you mentioned, in this age now where you don't have to play freshmen, it makes it real hard to keep any that aren't up to speed right away. In that same sort of regard, that same position, Sharif Mitchell is on his way to Ohio this offseason. John, Mr. Dennis, how much of a surprise was that to you?
Not a surprise. Quick tangent, but for our Omaha Maverick listeners, how you let Sharif Mitchell go to Ohio, that's a guy you have to find a way to keep if you ever want to get outside of the top or bottom 20 programs in the country. Not the focus of this. Not surprised he left. I think he's seen his role decrease over the past 2 or 3 years. I get why he left. I don't really think there would have been a ton of minutes. Maybe you put him in 7-8 minutes a game for on-ball defense if we're playing like a Jordan Hawkins last year and you need Trey to get a blow. Putting him in for 7-8 minutes isn't the worst thing in the world, but offense, he was close to a zero a majority of the time, and I think with the way we play, again, it's Omaha kid, wish him well, but probably for the best all around.
Yeah. And then the person I almost screwed up and said in the last one, John Christophilus, is headed to Seattle, also joining the contingent of XJs headed out west. Now this one kind of surprised me a little bit. He took the redshirt year. Reports were that he was doing very well in practice. And was somebody that was kind of trending in the right direction, but he's on his way out west. Any thoughts on Johnny C?
Yeah, not a ton. Wish him well. Again, I keep saying it, I think McDermott's shown the last few years, for better or for worse, the top 5 guys are going to play 36 minutes a game, which leaves 20 minutes for the other 10 guys on the roster. And so you look at it again, maybe you could have done something in a year or two, but again, for better or for worse, depending on who you ask, Farabello's in that role this year. You don't really need more than one spot-up shooter who can't do anything else. And when Farabello leaves after this year, a white spot-up 3 guard who can't play defense isn't exactly a hard get out of the portal.
No, that seems to be an abundance. Yeah. And then the 2 walk-ons, Xander Yates and Devin Davis, are on their way out of the program. I don't remember the way either of them went. But now we can get into discussing the big 2. And I'll also touch on, so an interesting note about our 3 transfers that we've mentioned, all going to KenPom 130 or better programs. So it could be interesting to see if they mix it up in their conference tournaments in March, maybe even catch a few of them in the tournament. So it's Arthur Kaluma headed to Kansas State. And this is one I think a lot of Jays fans had been speculating on since even before the season started. There were rumors about Arizona giving him a look, him being open to entering the portal, that kind of guy maybe, and it ends up being Kansas State. John, are you surprised? Mr. Dennis, are you surprised at all by the choice?
No, I think it's a good fit. Yeah, I mean, Kaluma was one of the most mad Nick players I've ever watched. You can think back to Kansas game 2 years ago. You can think back to BYU this last year. The final, no better game encapsulates Arthur Kaluma than the game at St. John's this year, where he was probably the worst player on the floor the first 35 minutes, and the final 5 put up like 10 and 6.
Yeah.
All the potential in the world. I think he played hard. I don't have anything against him. I wish him well. But I think it's a good fit. You look at what Tang did with Keontae Johnson last year. You had the Johnson-Doyle pairing, and now you're going to try to recreate that with Kaluma and Perry this upcoming year. I think it's a good fit for him. I think he didn't really fit Creighton's style that great. Kind of a little too erratic, I guess. Not a great shooter. I think, again, like he contributed last year, was responsible for a lot of good moments, but I think it's maybe one of those things where best to go your own ways.
Well, you mentioned, of course, the BYU and the Kansas game, right? Those are his 2 most notable games as a J, and they're 2 losses, right? Like the Kansas one you can excuse, but he's the kind of guy who a lot of his best games were when the team was not playing very well.
And to be fair to him, both those came without Kalkbrenner, and you can say, like, did we lose those because we ran through Kaluma, or no Kalkbrenner? Did we run through Kaluma because no Kalkbrenner? Chase your tail.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. It was a lot of negative plays. I mean, a lot of transition turnovers, which is something this team really can't afford because good Creighton teams have always been lethal in transition. A lot of travels. My God, he just could not sort out that handle. No matter how many times he looked good on that playing for Uganda, it must have been that different international ball or something, but he could not sort out the Nike Elite, apparently.
We will, to give him his flowers, the best, or I should say most fallen for pump fake by a sub 32% three-point shooter in the history of basketball.
My first Dr. Chim conspiracy of this podcast history is that teams were intentionally falling for it to force him to drive and turn it over. Because how many times would he do that? Pump fake succeeds, he goes 3 steps and then boots it off his foot.
Yeah.
So, no. Do I think that actually happened? No. It was just something about the pump fake, I guess. But I think it actually ended up working out in favor of the teams falling for it. So then we get to the one that surprised, and I'm going to go as far to say terrified me when the news came across. It's Ryan Nembhard, not to Arizona, but to Gonzaga. Thoughts on this, Mr. Dennis?
Yeah, first off, want to give a shout out to the Arizona fans who I'm sure are listening, who shilled for Ryan Nembhard in my mentions for 72 hours, only to not get him.
Yeah.
Just a middle finger to you guys. The Nembhard loss was terrifying. Like you said, it was very worrying at the time. A little bit of like, what's going on here? Is everyone going to leave? Like, is this team gone? And like, but to cut to it, and I will beat this drum all year until I'm proven wrong. Stephen Ashford's better.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. Believe me, we'll get to that. But
Stephen Ashford's better. You upgraded a point guard.
You know we agree on this. But at the moment where I got my text from, we'll call him my source for now, I'm sure he'll be a guest on this podcast eventually, shot me the text that, hey, he's heading out.
Yeah.
I thought we're losing all 5.
Yeah.
Because Kaluma and Nembhard going, that says to me Baylor and Trey and Kalk are going in the draft. That's what that said to me. So for a moment there, I'm like, they're all gone, and the only reason he's leaving is because he doesn't want to rebuild. And I was kind of fine with that, honestly. Like, I could get that at least. If, hey, we're losing the other 4, sure, you can go, right?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of get that. But I thought from the beginning he's a guy, he's not going early to the draft, right? He's a 4-year program stalwart. Like, he's going to be there in the starting role for 4 years, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And clearly, indeed, it doesn't. But yeah, it turned out he was the easiest to replace in the portal, because you look at portal options for a guy like Kaluma, there really weren't many, and we kind of didn't even go pursue that route. Like, you try and think of, like, wing 4s that were in the portal. They were either gone early or just not that good. But there were plenty of point guard options in the portal. Asmus, Perry, Ashworth, obviously, Rhodey too, who I still kind of am surprised we didn't end up with, but I suppose it makes sense the way things worked out.
Yeah.
How confident did you feel, though, when you saw the names we were being attached to in the portal?
Perfectly fine. I was not a huge Nembhard. Nembhard's obviously a very good, like, college point guard, and I don't want to fall into the trap of, like, actually that guy who left our team wasn't good, and,
right.
like, we're better without him. I fully recognize, like, the Baylor game, he was huge. The Arkansas game, he was huge. He showed flashes, but, like, wasn't good defensively. Not that Ashworth is. Rating-wise, like, to cite KenPom, Nembhard ranked, or put up a 108, which is great. Ashworth is a 128.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close,
right,
offensively. And I know you want to say, like, competition, which if Ashworth came from the if Ashworth played at Virginia last year and transferred here, no one would be citing competition.
Despite the ACC being...
The Mountain West rated out better than the ACC by every metric.
Right. And
like,
certainly the top of the conference, you can argue, is right there with any...
I mean, San Diego State was a runner-up, and the bottom isn't close. The bottom of the Mountain West ranked... There were 3 teams, I think, in the ACC that ranked worse than anyone in the Mountain West.
But you talk about Air Force as the worst team in the Mountain West, perfectly competent basketball team.
And they ranked in the 150s. Like, it was a good conference. This isn't a Baylor Shireman type thing, and I think maybe we'll get into that down the road, where you dig into his numbers, and he shot 49% coming over from South Dakota State, but it was 34% against top 100 teams. And all right, maybe we could have seen the shooting regression. Like, this is a guy who shot 49% last year playing good defenses. Like, there was San Diego State in that conference, there was Boise State in that conference. Like, he played good teams.
Tough teams, tough environments too. Like, you forget how many good buildings are in the Mountain West too. You're going to the Pit, you're going to Logan.
Yep.
Those are tough places to play. And with the Baylor thing too, like, when you mentioned that, I just kind of want to touch on this quickly. Like, it's almost a surprise he didn't have a harder time adjusting to the Big East.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people note the shooting regression. Like, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
You know, he had games where he was ice cold, but for the most part, it's pretty seamless. So we're losing rim pressure with Nembhard, for sure. Like, Trey can replicate some of that, but at the end of the day, his game is mid-range. How worried are you about losing that aspect?
So I think you lose some rim pressure directly in Nembhard, but I also think you gain some back by when you think how much harder they're going to have to hedge on Ashworth, and you gain it then through Kalkbrenner in pick and rolls. Ashworth was absolutely lethal in the pick and roll. I don't have the number.
I do. We'll get to it, yeah.
I'll say I think it's 99th percentile in the country.
He's 99th percentile in 4 of the 6 shooting statistics.
Okay, yeah. So I'm sure you'll get that. You're the numbers man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to gain a lot of it back. Ryan Nembhard shot 36% from 3. That's perfectly fine for a college point guard. But I think you're going to gain a lot of it back from just how hard they're going to have to hedge on Ashworth. And this wasn't catch and shoot. This wasn't off the dribble. This was all of it.
Well, and you wonder, too, because, Kalkbrenner isn't like a true post player, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, you had a lot of teams that would drop off and come try to do the double on him, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that this year with this starting line. He should be surrounded by 4 40% shooters.
Yep.
Like 4 guys who have that capability in them.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Yeah.
So, I agree. There's going to be games where we miss him for sure, where they've got an on-ball defender who's just all over Ashworth or something like that, and Trey's maybe not getting to the rim and threes aren't falling. Like, we're going to miss him for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be games where, you just don't notice at all.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about, we're done with subtractions, let's talk about additions, and let's talk about Stephen Ashworth, because I think you could create him in a lab as a Creighton player, and that's exactly what you would want.
Yeah.
Because I wrote this down, and I think other fan bases think we're kidding when we say he's better, that we've upgraded.
I think they think it's what I'm kind of alluded to earlier with it, where it's like the guy who left my team isn't that good.
Right, they think we're coping.
Yeah.
And I don't think it could be further from the truth. He's not a guy to me that's always going to stand out on the score sheet, right? And I think even from what I'm hearing from practices and scrimmages so far, that's probably going to be true. But he doesn't need to. Mm-hmm. Like, when Nembhard was at his best, he was like 8.5 points a game, 4 assists guy, right? Like, that's what we need. Not everyone in the starting 5 has to be dropping 30 every other night, right? Like, you don't need that to succeed at the college level. So it was an article from Jacob Padilla, and I enjoy reading his work. The numbers are ridiculous. So Pull-up shooting, off-the-dribble shooting, 50% from the field, 99th percentile, 48% from three. 48% off the dribble. That's Zegarowski-esque, right? When he was going through that phase at the end of the season where every time he pulled up, he made it. Every single time. He was, 5 for 5 against Seton Hall, 7 for 7 against Butler, right? He didn't miss for, the last 2 weeks of the season. Pick and roll, 47% from three, 99th percentile. Spot-up shooting, 48% from three, 99th percentile. His catch and shoot is his lowest, and by lowest, I mean he was 42% from three and 88th percentile.
Yeah.
Transition, 54% from three, 99th percentile. 54% in transition. We haven't had that.
Yeah.
We have not had that. I don't even know what to say about that profile. It's in the most made threes in the country. It's not like we're talking about a small sample size here.
Yeah.
He led the nation in made threes last year.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see when you look at a profile like that. Again, maybe it doesn't translate from the Mountain West to the Big East. I think the Big East in general does have longer guards, I think there's more athleticism, more length. Maybe for whatever reason, it doesn't translate. But it's hard to see how you sit here in February and think shit, I wish we really had Nembhard.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, because, he's 6'1", and even that might be generous from the looks of things, but you're not going to see a whole lot of 6'1", 2 guards in the Big East, right? If that's how it ends up guarding him and Trey, which is very possible depending on the situation. The conference is as long and as old this year as it's been, right? Maybe except for the Seton Hall years with, Gill and Mamu.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it'll be an adaptation for him, but at the same time he's so versatile and he can shoot from so many positions that it kind of doesn't matter. Because we talk about Baylor, he doesn't have that shot like Mitch used to get off where he's just running into the corner, throwing it up, and he goes in, right?
Yeah.
Baylor has a very specific kind of shot he likes to take. Mm-hmm. Ashworth takes everything.
Yeah. And can I one other thing about Ashworth that I think is important not to overlook, and this might be a little old man take, Ashworth's a man.
He's 25.
25?
Yeah.
25. Married, I think.
Yeah, he's married. They just got married, and I don't think he's the type to have a kid out of wedlock, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But, that's a man, and, you look at 2 years ago, one of the best close late-game teams in the country. Last year, one of the worst, and I think you can acknowledge, I think there is some truth, close games are luck, but, I don't subscribe to every single 2-point game being a coin flip. I think there's something to be said of Ryan Hawkins, AOC from winning programs, adults, 2 guys you can turn to down the stretch, 2 guys to keep the huddle calm. Yeah. And you look at last year's team, frankly, did not have that. You were a team led by 20-year-olds, I think, having a guy like Ashworth, played under Odom, who I think is a great coach, done a lot of winning himself at different stops. His team did a lot of winning. I think having a guy like that late in games, who's played in tough environments, to be an adult in the room, an adult on the floor, I think can't really be overstated as well.
Because, we think about previous Creighton teams. Obviously Hawkins is the guy we think about when we think about veteran leadership. The 2019-20 team, I think, was kind of a different breed because they didn't need a veteran leader. You got Zegarowski and Ballack on the floor, probably 2 of the most mature guys ever to play college basketball, right? Mm-hmm. Those guys are in control 100% of the time. That's the vibe I get from him.
Yeah. And
he's got age, he's got experience. So I think you throw him in with our existing senior, you don't think of Baylor as senior leadership, but by now he probably has some of that. We're an old lineup, certainly not the oldest one in the conference, but I think you're gonna notice a difference this year.
Yeah.
All right, so next up, Jonathan Lawson. And admittedly, there isn't much to go on with him because it was limited minutes at Memphis last year. A lot of their fans commented that it was mostly defensive struggles that kept him off the floor. Take that for what it's worth. I mean, I'll admit right now, Hardaway not playing him doesn't bother me. It's not a detractor for me. I think that team has a type of player, and he's not it. He's he's a shooter, right? Like, I think he shot 41% on limited attempts there.
19 of 46.
Yeah, not a whole lot to go on.
And 67% from the line. So
Yeah, that's a little rough. 6'6", long wingspan. He's a stretch 2 or a small 3 maybe.
Or
Knowing our lineups, that wouldn't shock me if he plays kind of a like Trey Farabello and Baylor, and he plays like a 3-4 split in there. Looked good in the Bahamas, for whatever that's worth. He was knocking down looks. I think this is a guy, Farabello will almost certainly stay first off the bench, but I think he can challenge for that spot.
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of like you said, admittedly, don't know a ton about him. Like you said, shot well in limited minutes. The defensive profile is there. I'm sure going to Creighton isn't where you necessarily think of becoming a great on-ball defender, but I think he can give this team a little bit of what he needs, or of what it needs with the right mindset. The one thing, and the Ashford Nembhard sort of brings this about a little bit, but they do lack kind of that athleticism with losing Kaluma, and I think if he is someone who can put pressure on the rim or even go kind of play like a Mason Miller role last year, and I mean he's thin, he's not going to bruise with like the 2 big Xavier lineups they threw out last year, types of those teams, but if he can go and compete for 7-8 minutes, get rebounds, knock down an open 3, and just kind of spell guys, I think it would be a good addition. And sort of to circle back to the point I had earlier about like the different type of high school recruiting, where this guy's, I think, a true sophomore.
Yes. Yep.
True sophomore, where, and I think that's kind of something you're going to see in new age college basketball is why take a high school guy who you're going to have to wait a year or 2 until he's ready for the college game when you can go pluck him out of the portal.
Yeah.
Kind of like this team did with Lawson, did with Trout. We're going to see how the approach works. It's obviously something new to college basketball. But I'm interested to see what he does in big minutes this year.
Yeah, so that's it for our non-freshman transfers, because next guy on our list is Isaac Trott, who is the redshirt freshman out of Virginia and out of Grand Island. So this is a guy I've had on my radar for a couple of years, and I was really disappointed when we didn't grab him. I think he was a perfect fit for the program. Now we've got him here, and Mr. Dennis, what are your thoughts on Mr. Trout?
Yeah, admittedly don't know a ton about him. Heard he's a great shooter, which is, I mean, we're Creighton, always going to be important. He's tall, 6'11".
6'10", 6'11", depending on what you look at.
Tall. I worry a little bit about his mobility. I've heard that didn't look great in the Bahamas. And having 2 guys with him and Kalkbrenner, which Kalkbrenner is obviously a great defender, but he excels around the hoop.
Yep.
I don't know exactly where Trout's role is going to fit in this year, unless the foot speed and to a point handling looks a lot better than it did in the Bahamas. But again, it's another piece, maybe for the future, maybe in a couple minutes this year, where he's the guy you could use the bang with the 2 big Xavier lineups. Yeah, I don't know. I'll wait and see.
Well, because that's a great, like, if Xavier was at full strength this year and they're running Hunter and Fremantle out there, that gives you options then, where we don't have to put Mason on one of them and see what happens, right?
I will say, when you started that, I did think for a second, like, is Nunji still in school?
No,
I was going to lose my goddamn
He had his
mind.
option, I think.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's 20. He's like 26 now too. So
he might
I want to say he had another year if he really wanted to, because I thought I saw a Xavier fan tweeting about that. I wonder here if he ends up taking some of King's minutes.
That would not surprise me.
I wonder if that's where the battle is. I question if he can guard small 4s.
Yeah.
Right, like, it worries me if a guy like, I don't know how great of an example this is because he's not that quick, but like Caravan running around on the perimeter, that's a tough assignment for him. I don't think there are too many easy assignments for him at the 4. I think I trust him more guarding big immobile 5s than I would 4s right now.
Yeah.
But that said, like, the shooting is lauded so far in practice, inside, outside. He's got some mid-range game, it sounds like, some turnaround in him.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if nothing else, he's extra fouls to burn, right? Because because that's something we almost had a problem with last year, is we would get to the last 3 minutes and we're on 4 fouls because we used all Kings and nobody else's, right?
Yeah.
So if nothing else, we've got another guy to do some of that. We also added Josh Townley Thomas, who is apparently a local JUCO kid. Reports are he's having some good practices, so maybe he gets those kind of like Manny Suarez minutes. I know that's before your time, but it's front court depth. If somebody gets injured, we've seen in the past we had to play Modestus Cancelaris against Kansas in a tournament game. So you never know what these kind of guys might get into.
They might kiss and give themselves mono.
Yeah. You never know. And then as far as actual freshmen, so we got a package deal out of Reno in Sterling Knox and Shane Thomas. So Thomas, I believe, is a walk-on. Knox is a kind of late bloomer recruit, it sounds like. He's certainly got the look of an athlete. He's 6'4", 200, I think.
Looks exactly like Manny Machado.
He does. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But I think this is a deliberate effort by Greg to recruit a different type of player. And I think we saw that with the Larry Johnson commitment. Because to me, looking at their films, Johnson looks like a higher talent version of Knox, basically.
Yeah, I think it's trying to get more athleticism in the program, like we talked about with Trout. Good shooter, not super athletic. You had Christopoulos obviously leave. You have Farabello. You have Ashworth. I think, kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's becoming clear in the portal that one of the easiest transfers to grab is the shooter that's going to spot up, shoot 45%, and not give you a ton on defense.
Right.
So I think kind of rolling for a lot of these high upside guys. Like, I think the thing with Knox is, like, if we're going to be honest, he's probably going to end up an All-American in 3 years, or he's going to be at like a Division III. It's going to go one of two ways, I think, of either, like, when you get those late bloomers, it's either like, this is a diamond in the rough, we found a stud, or like, yeah, we had a free scholarship. Like,
yeah. And I certainly trust our player development at this point. Like, for years, we were the program that was good at identifying like those high 3, low 4-star guys. Like, I think Tyshawn's a great example of that, as somebody who came in as like this guy could be something, and we turned him into something. So I trust that. Yeah, no expectations this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he redshirts for sure.
I'd pencil them as red shirts.
Yeah.
That wouldn't shock me to see them like down transfer after the year, which, whatever.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
In the same vein, then, Brock Weiss, big old center in. He's a flip from SLU. Flipped his commitment from SLU. He's from Tennessee, so you got any guess what high school he went to?
I guess the same one as Mason Miller.
Yeah, that's a great guess. Houston High School continues to be a feeder for the Creighton program. Can never guess how that happened. He's wearing the red shirt in practice already, it looks like, so he's taking a seat for a year. I was actually kind of impressed watching his high school film. Like, he looks like kind of like an old school Creighton big, where he kind of knocks down. He reminds me a little bit of like Toby Hegner. Will knock down some looks, probably take way more shots than he should.
Yeah.
Little bit of a liability foot speed wise on the DN, but hey, you never know. It looks like he could be a serviceable backup 5 down the line. You got anything on Weiss?
Not much.
Yeah.
Sure. Slow, big. Like, sure.
Yeah. And then, so the one I think everyone would be the most excited about this year, Josiah Dotzler, is coming in. It looks like he's going to be filling our backup point guard role.
Yeah, I don't love true freshman guards. I don't love freshman guards at all. I will say backup point guard I think is going to be Trey Alexander. So maybe second on the depth chart, but I don't think he sees many minutes, and if he is, it probably means someone got hurt, is in foul trouble, or the season's gone very wrong.
I agree. I think Greg is going to do a whole lot of rotations in the first half, where there are very few minutes, or in the second half rather, where there are very few minutes where one of Trey or Steven isn't on the floor.
Yeah, I think the way this team is built, that's probably the way it should be. If you want to dick around against Florida A&M and give Dotzler some minutes at the 1, sure. But I do think I would imagine when Trey came back, there was some sort of agreement of we'll give you more looks on the ball this year to kind of showcase yourself for the NBA.
Yeah, and I think that's been pretty well documented. Certainly that's the discussion from the national media, which I'm sure they get talking points from the coaches, is he's going to have the ball in his hands more often. That's where he was arguably at his best freshman year. Certainly he played his best after Nembhard was out that season, whether by necessity or he truly is better in that point guard role. I suppose we'll find out. Doetzler, again, not a super highly touted recruit, but winner, I think multiple-time state champion in Nebraska, at least once. He looked up to speed in the Bahamas, I'll say that much. Like he looked like he can at least play at that pace. I don't think he's a guy who's going to be forcing shots up. You know, like from the little we've seen so far, I think he's going to be a know his role kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know how high the upside is, but I got no problem with him getting 5-6 minutes a game this year and maybe getting a bigger role next year.
No. For as much as we talk about all these guys, like, come February, come March, we're going to be set deep.
Yeah, and we know that, and everyone in the country knows that too. Yeah. So I got no problem with the way we run our system. We know what the ups and downs of it are. You just pray we're not running anybody into the ground and, you know, do the best you can on that. So we're kind of into returners now, and first one in numerical order is, of course, a man who we get a lot of flack for our position on, and Francisco Farabello. Me in particular, I get a lot of attention for maybe not being his number one fan, especially last year. But I think we kind of both agree we're looking at a bounce back year.
I thought I got more hate on than you did. Whatever. We're not going to compete
right.
to be the biggest Farabello hater.
I mean, there was one tweet that I think Baylor sent out in favor of him, and somebody deliberately tagged me, and he's like, he's talking about you, asshole. I'm like, yeah, he probably is, but I don't know, make more shots. What do you want me to say?
Sorry, you're on scholarship to be a spot-up shooter. And
you shot 26%.
Yeah,
fucking
sorry.
Yeah.
I actually think an interesting prop bet, and we can go into it later, later episode, later in the pod, is Farabello or Shireman, who shoots the higher three-point percentage this year. Like, what's so maddening to me about Farabello is, like I just said, like, you aren't asked to do anything. Like, is it asking you that much to spot up and make the wide-open corner three? Like, that's it. I'm not asking you to drive. I'm not asking you to play defense. I'm not asking you to rebound. You have one job, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what pissed me off. Like, and you want to talk about people, like, jumping at Kaluma's pump fake to let him drive and do nothing? The amount of times people jumped at his shot fake, he went into the lane and pissed himself.
Well, yeah, the number, I think he kicked it off the side of the backboard at least 2 or 3 times.
Like, there's never been a player I was more sure would not score from 6 feet and in.
Right.
Like, and again, like, if you want to say he took 89 threes last year, like, he shot 30%. Like, that's not good.
A lot of that's late in the season too.
Yeah, the game against Baylor, he probably made half of it. Like, probably half of the season.
4 in that game, 3.
Whatever. You know what? Good for him. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna have to be better. Like, you can't have his 10 minutes a game. You can't have those be zeros like they were last year.
Well, and people argue with you and say they weren't, but at the same time, like, the things he was doing good on offense, like, I think he's a good passer. I actually think he's a very good passer. That one he made, the little wraparound to King in the San Diego State game, sticks out in particular.
Yeah.
So I think he's, like, the topic is winning plays, right? He makes winning plays. He got lost on defense a lot last year, too. Yeah. So the question is he giving you something that someone else off the bench doesn't? And for now, I think yes. I think he's kind of that, not combo guard is the wrong way to put it, but like a true 2 in the way that Lawson probably isn't, where he can do a little bit more at the top of the key.
Probably, yes.
And I trust him. Like, he knows the defensive plan, at least. He was pretty good at running guys off the line. His transition defense was spotty. That's when he got lost a lot.
Yeah. To give you some numbers on Farabello, 89.60 rating. That is bad.
That's terrible.
That is bad.
That's terrible.
Assist rate 9.8. That is bad. Turnover rate 17.3. That is bad.
Yeah.
Block percentage 0. Steal 1.6. Whatever. We don't turn teams over. I mean, those are bad numbers for a spot-up shooter that shot 30% from 3.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there is a track record there to think a bounce back is reasonable. He shot 38% at TCU in 22, 45% in 21, 42% in 20, and those are on limited times, which it's not like he put up 200 threes last year.
Right.
And again, the degree of difficulty on the shots last year was not high.
No, it was a lot of open or
it was a lot of open,
scarcely guarded
threes.
looks. Yeah. They're ones I expect guys in the KFC to knock down at 33%. You know?
Yeah. So if he's not better, I know you said he suits the 2-guard role better than Lawson. Like, if he's not better, that's Lawson's role.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You figure out, like, he's going to have to be better. I think last year you had quite literally nothing behind him, and he had to be that guy. Like, if he's not better this year, I think he's not going to play.
But I think we both agree he probably will be. Like, we've seen enough there where also it's like it'd be hard to have a worse season.
That's kind of what I was going to think. It's like
Yeah.
if you're hailed as a power 6 spot-up shooter, like, I just kind of assume you're going to shoot better than 30%.
And this is one of those things where it's like, I don't know how much the coaches are buttering a guy up because they kind of have to play him.
Yeah.
But all indications to me are that Mac intends to do the same thing with him this year. He's the 6th man.
Yep.
So I'm going to, like, trust that Mac knows a hell of a lot more than I do. And if he thinks he's got it in him and he's going to play well in the system, then I'm fine with that. He's certainly not my least favorite addition by transfer ever. That goes to the one and only Connor Cashaw, the worst basketball player to ever play the game. But yeah, he's just got to make more open looks. It really is that simple. You shoot 35%, and no one's going to have a problem with you.
Yeah.
And that's the issue with his role. It's not limited attempt. Like you said, he shot 93s. So the 5% difference is a couple of makes, right?
Yeah.
But that really does make the difference for a guy like that.
Yeah.
So, all right, we go to Kalk, and the fuck can you say, right? He's going to be a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year if he stays healthy.
Most likely, yeah. You worry about voter fatigue. Maybe
Sure.
Klingon is. I was very wrong on how Edey would translate to a bigger workload. I'm kind of doubling down again on Klingon, which I think we'll touch on that later. Again, why I'm skeptical again, but yeah.
Well, I'll say expecting it. We're expecting the performance of a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of since Patrick Ewing, which just kind of speaks to the ridiculousness of how good he's been.
Yeah, he's great on defense. He does enough on offense. I'd like to see him rebound a little more. Like,
Yep.
I'd like to see him get tougher underneath. I mean, Mensah and Arap bullied the hell out of him
Yep.
in that Elite 8 game.
Yep.
Sonogo bullied him. Like, I want to see him get a little bit tougher. And one of his great things is how little he fouls. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him foul a little more.
Yeah, but you worry about... this year I'm maybe not as worried about how thin we are behind him.
It's not, and like, I know it's tough to, like, say, flip a switch, like, now go straight up, now you can worry about fouling. But,
Right.
like, I think there are times where, like, 5 minutes left, like, you think of the Marquette game, where I guess we had him use a dumb intentional foul and get him his 4th, but, like,
Yeah.
there's a minute or 2 left, he has 3 fouls, Kolik's going up for a layup, like, you can put him on the ground there. Like, I don't think you need to end every game with 1 or 2 fouls. Like, I think playing stronger, playing more aggressive, like, maybe you get a foul going for a rebound, like, maybe you actually do throw Max across the floor.
Well, because the thing about him is he gets credit with the referees, clearly.
Yeah.
Like, they've identified him as a guy, like, he will go straight up and will give him the benefit of the doubt more often than not.
Yeah.
King is going to get called for a foul every time they touch the ball.
As he probably should.
Yeah, like, a lot of them are fouls, but even the 50-50s are going against him
Yeah.
100% of the time.
As he probably should.
Yeah.
He probably should.
He does this thing where he, like, sticks his hands down here, like, at the guy's waist.
And continues to, like, walk through the guy after the shot. Like,
Yeah.
when you end up 3 feet behind where the guy initially shot it from, you're probably going to get called for a foul.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I'm nitpicking here. Like, the one thing I would like to see him be more aggressive rebounding. But yeah, like, there's not a ton to say on him.
Right.
Like, assuming he's healthy, he's going to be the guy. He's the guy you build your team around.
If college basketball had a most valuable player award, he wins it, right? Like, I think last year proved that.
Probably.
I mean, you can say Kolek is as important for Marquette as he is for us. Yeah, well. But literally a 6-game losing streak without him at 100%. Like the difference between him being at 60% and 100% for us meant wins and losses.
Yeah.
And the only other note I've got on him is don't get happy with the three. You're going to be surrounded by 4, maybe 40% 3-point shooters. Like,
Yeah.
we know you can make it. We've seen him in practice now.
Yeah.
Pick your moments, right?
Yeah. We did. I feel like we did go through this last year where we said, like, oh, he's going to shoot. He shot 19, which,
Right.
whatever.
Right. Which is
fine.
just enough
Yeah,
to keep
sure,
everybody
fine,
honest.
do
Yeah.
it. Like, if you want to shoot 5 against Florida A&M when we're up 20, be my guest. But
Yeah. So, next on the docket, Mason Miller, who I think we are both in agreement he doesn't have to be a star this year, right?
correct.
His job, knock down your open looks.
Yep.
And don't be he's going to be a negative on defense, right? Like, we know that. But how much of it is just play within the system, run guys off the line, don't give up easy twos to guys who you know can make them, the two of those guys in the conference that might exist, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to be careful about how often we switch screens this year, which I'll give Matt credit. That's something he changes from year to year, is how often we switch screens. So I think even last year we fought through them a little more often than we have in years past. Because I don't want, if he gets switched onto a guard, that's just a make every time.
Yeah.
If he dribbles more than 30 times in the season, I think that's a problem. You know,
agree.
like, we've got our little 3-guard rotation at the top. I think we'll still do that. Park him on the wing, man.
Yeah.
Park him on the wing on the strong side and
Yeah.
let him knock down some quick makes.
Yeah, I think he needs to play for short bursts, and just to his credit, he played hard. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He has. I don't know. Have we released our official roster for the year yet?
What do you mean?
Like, his weight come out?
Yeah, it has, because Kalk's 275 now, supposedly.
He's just not.
He's just not.
I mean, yeah, I'm on KenPom right now. Some interesting heights and weights. Francisco Farabello, 6'3", 185. Mason Miller, 6'9", 190.
Yeah.
Ben Stolzberg, 6'4", 200. It's tough to play 4 in the Power 6 if you're weighing 190 pounds.
Well, and the guy we're all scared of, right? We know he's guarding Bryce Hopkins probably.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's just a nightmare matchup. And you take what you can get with that, because, you know, he'll take a lot of twos. He'll miss a lot of his shots. Like, he'll get his 20 points for sure in that matchup.
Yeah.
But it's the guys like Caravan and Joplin, though, that I'm actually pretty excited to have him for. I think those are the right kind of matchups. Yeah, he takes a lot of his shots outside, though.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them, more than half, I think.
Yeah, we'll see what Joplin is this year. Like, if he's going to get downhill more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Little lengthy, like, those are the kind of guys I think I'm more excited to see him guard.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a Seton Hall team that's probably running a 6'6", or St. John's. I think they're both running like 6'5", 6'6" guys at the 4.
My Johnnies.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Sammy Osmani is still kicking around on the roster. I was positive he would have been out of eligibility, but apparently not. So we got to Trey now.
Gonna need Sammy those first couple weeks to cover 29.
Yeah, he'll be a very interesting player.
Sammy's going to be one of the most make or break financially important players of this team, I think.
Because, I mean, the usual cast of walk-ons is gone this year. He's the last
Do
of
we
the...
still have Xander or not?
No, he's gone. He transferred.
Okay.
The one who I don't remember if we still have or not is Evan Young.
Evan Young. You could pick 25 guys at the KFC who are better than...
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because these are the guys you're worried about for covers, right?
Yeah.
So if we're running, like, it's Osmani, Sterling, Brock Weiss is redshirting, I guess, but, like, these are the guys you're like, Townley Thomas.
Fred King, who will put him at the line 6 times in the final minute.
All right, Trey, though. I don't know if we got to say a whole lot. His ceiling is top 5 player in college basketball.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I think maybe the counting stats will be a little low just because there's so much to go around on the team.
Yep.
But yeah, I think he's obviously had a great 2 years. But like I want to see him step up. Like I want to have the Trey game. Like I don't think we've had that yet. Like maybe there's something I'm missing, but like I just want to see him in the Big East tournament, in the games against Marquette, UConn, those top teams, like I want to see a game where he just says like, "Give me the ball, fuck out of here." Like I'm gonna go get us a bucket right now.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see from him. But yeah, I mean, him coming back is huge. I think he does have NBA prospects in his future. Yeah, I don't think there's any one thing that you really say like he needs to improve here. He shot 41% from three, 82% from the line. Assist rate and turnover rate were good.
And he was a
Good
better
on-ball
shooter.
defender.
Better shooter in conference play too.
Yeah.
Led the conference in conference.
Yeah,
games
he got
and
off to
threes.
a slow start in non-con. Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what I want to see is the Tories, that stupid meme, like the dog in him. Like for as much as I fucking hate Tyler Kolek, like
he's got it.
the end of the end of the game here, like twice, get out of the way, I'm gonna get to the rim. Like that's what I want to see from him.
And he was the guy. If I don't score it, Iguodaro's getting a perfect pass and he's laying it in, right? Like every time. Greg said the words of death though, and I know you haven't been around this program quite as long as I have. He gave him the guard the best guy nod today at media days. And these are words that terrify me because he's given it to two players now. He's given it to Tyshawn Alexander. That one worked out fantastically. Yeah. He should have won Big East Defensive Player of the Year that year. He was that good. He gave it to Davion Mintz, who allowed 50 points to Marcus Howard, 30-some to Shamori Pons. Like a cast of characters that year dropped 30 on him because he insisted on guarding the other team's best player. So I hate that he's giving that to Trey. Like I hate that he's specifically giving him that nod of guard the other team's best player, especially when our system is run everybody's ass off the line, right? Yeah. So I'm interested to see how he adapts to that. As long as Kalk's back there, I'm not too worried, right? Like we'll have a top 30 defense as long as Kalk's there.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal. I don't think he's going to be anywhere near the defender Tyshawn was. Like, he had a length that Trey doesn't quite have. He had a bounce. But, yeah, other than that, I'm not worried about him at all. Fred King. Talk about the forgotten man this offseason. I feel like absolutely no one has talked about him when he's theoretically in line to be a starter in our lineup next year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about him because he's normally on the bench with 2 fouls by the under 12, despite getting in at 13:04.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. He's fine. Again, if he's playing big minutes, I think it's an issue.
Yep.
He's very limited. He's not fast. He's an absolute hack. One Fred King play defense without fouling challenge. He's fine. He is a good rebounder. Or earlier when I said Kalkbrenner needs to get more aggressive, he is strong. He's strong. He's aggressive. He's only been playing basketball 5 years.
Yeah.
So in theory, you can see where there's the upward trajectory there. And I don't for as much as I'm making fun of him being a hack. I don't really have an issue with it.
No,
he's the perfect yin to Kalk's yang.
I've got it written down. I want to see you use your fouls and catch the ball near the rim.
Yeah,
because if he does both those things, I think he's an efficient player in our system.
Yeah, get 4 boards in your 8 minutes a game.
Catch a lob.
Preferably less than 2 turnovers. I'll give you 1.
That's why I mean catch the ball near the rim and go right up.
Yeah. You should not have the ball in your hands for more than 1 second.
No, and I don't want to see him lay up this year. You better dunk that ball.
Yeah.
You're either going to draw a foul, and he's not the worst free throw shooter in the world, I don't think.
20 of 32 last year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take that all day.
I'll take that.
He's not the worst free throw shooter, and that's the worst case scenario is you're drawing a foul out of that. So dunk the ball. Baylor is getting a lot of acclaim from practices that he's been doing a little bit more this year, a little more attacking mindset.
Yeah.
Might have the ball in his hands a little bit more. Saw a lot of that at South Dakota State. I'm still not convinced that's his best role, but he's certainly a distributor. He can make passes in transition. What are your thoughts on Baylor potentially being a little less of a spot-up guy this year?
I don't love it. I kind of think that's what we have Ashworth, I think we have Ashworth for the purpose of Baylor not needing to be much more than a spot-up guy. I don't know. He shot 36% last year, which I know was kind of a letdown to some, myself included, which I think looking back, that was probably a bit unrealistic. Coming from the Summit League where they do not play defense in the Summit League. Again, like I think they had like one team ranked like the top 300 defensive. And like I think there were a couple times early in the year and throughout the year where he made passes that like I'm sure the 6'3" point guard he just got out of accounting like doesn't pick it off, but were dunks the other way. So I'm hoping another year he adjusted the speed. I'm hoping like a little bit more mature. Yeah, I don't know. I think he'll be good. I think he'll continue to be a huge help on the glass, which you need with Kalkbrenner not really being a big D rebounder. Led the team in a wide margin by defensive rebound rate.
Yeah.
He'll be fine again, I think.
The role that I thought he was best in last year, and I'd like to see him do a little bit more of this year, when he would get either switched on to a smaller guard or they would just line one up against him, he would do that like Hawkins-esque back down a little bit, and he was pretty efficient. Like I remember the Cintas game last year, he did that probably 8 or 9 times on Boom. I think they had guarding him. Mm-hmm. He was effective with that. He was efficient. I could see him doing a little more of that. That's kind of a different kind of rim pressure where you still might get some guys to collapse down on that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does early in the season. I think it's something that if it's not working early, Greg will tell him to calm down with it.
Yeah.
You know, like I think he's a mature enough player where he'll listen to that. But that is the Creighton roster for 2023-2024, as talented of a lineup as we've ever had, as many weapons as we've ever, maybe not as many weapons as we've ever had, certainly, but it's going to be an interesting season. Like I said, I'm all in. My eggs are in the basket on this team.
They will be for me. Like again, I'm trying to gone through a lot lately with teams and people that I'm very strongly rooting for losing. I'm a little wounded right now, but again, 2 weeks from now I'll be up. Again, just like the whole macro scale, it's hard to see it lining up better. Like I'm already, I think, kind of pre-resigned to like it's our turn to be upset in the tournament.
We've been so good, and this is something we've talked about before. We have been so good at avoiding bye game losses, and I don't want to say avoiding tournament upsets because that Rhode Island game counts for sure.
Yeah,
it was before when no Mo Watson. Like there are plenty of reasons we lost that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of feels like one of those things. Like every team gets got at some point, and it feels like we haven't been in a while. Yeah. Our last real shitty non-conference loss was in like 2013, Nebraska notwithstanding. Because they got mad at me when I said that last year. Like that Nebraska loss was our worst loss in a non-conference game since 2013.
Yeah, I mean we were 13.5 point favorites. Yeah, it's bad. That's not a bad loss, and like that's what I'm hoping. Like another year for Trey. Kalkbrenner's kind of immune to that piece of it. Like Trey, Baylor, then bringing in an adult like Ashworth. Like we did have a lot of games last year where we played like shit.
Yep.
Like, I mean, San Diego State, you should have won that game by 25.
Oh, have you gone back and watched it yet?
No, I haven't I watched like 2 minutes and was like, yeah, I don't want to really.
I just did it for the first time like 2 weeks ago. I finally went back and watched. It's brutal.
I know what I'll see. Like,
yeah.
I know I'm going to see, like, there's probably about 6 fouls they could have called on them that they didn't. There's one they called on us that maybe they didn't need to. And there's probably about 7 open threes that we...
Yeah, that's the part that really is going to bother you watching it back.
The Kaluma 3 that lipped out, or rimmed out, I think it would have ended up 10?
9. I think
9?
6 was our big lead for a while there.
Okay. I mean, I still think that 3 goes in.
Yeah.
Game over.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I'll just do this now and get it out of the way because I was going to do a deep dive on it at some point, but go back and watch our defensive decisions on the last plays because they make no fucking sense.
Oh, I think
we had Kaluma on Bradley and Trey on a rope, and we've got Nemhard guarding Trammell out to the 30-foot line.
We might need to do like a mini pod of just like
that game.
Let's get angry. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm up for it because that play alone, I could do 5 minutes on that.
I don't know.
We'll do it after a loss this year or something like that.
Yeah, that'll be just what we need. Let's compound. That'd be kind of funny if we lose to like Florida A&M. We're like, you know what, fuck it, this too.
Let's
Like,
get this all out of the way right,
right
now.
Like,
Airing the grievances of the program.
yeah.